Thank you for coming. Welcome to Arts Place. So this evening we have a speaker series event for you called Sniffing Out Invasive Species, Alberta Conservation K9 Program with Cindy Sawchuk and her Detection Dog Extraordinaire Hilo, who's down here next to me on my right, will be demonstrating some of his detection skills later. So for those that have never met or heard me, my name is Nick DeReuter. I'm the WildSmart Program Director here in Canmore. Just a few housekeeping items. Washrooms are outside these doors, straight ahead right near the main entrance. There's washrooms there, and in case of a fire, there's emergency exits back here, and also the main doors through in which you came. For those that don't know anything about WildSmart, we are a proactive conservation program that encourages efforts by communities to reduce negative human-wildlife interactions. And we are a program of the Biosphere Institute of the Bow Valley, which is an organization here in Canmore. And at the Biosphere Institute, we empower local residents, businesses, and visitors to be active environmental stewards through targeted education, research, and community engagement. And our work does rely entirely on donations and sponsors, so thank you very much for your generous donations at the door to support our continuing community-based efforts to promote human-wildlife coexistence. Right off the bat, I want to thank our sponsor for this evening, the Rotary Club of Canmore, so thank you. A big round of applause for them. And I'd like to thank our amazing volunteer wildlife ambassadors. You may saw a few of these lovely gents and ladies in their blue vests outside. Hopefully you had a chance to talk to them. They are amazing community volunteers who head out on the trails and at events around the community to help spread wildlife safety information, responsible trail use, all those great things, and they are a big step on helping to try and improve that coexistence piece here in town. So thank you to the ambassadors, and also for Jerry and Tyler who are outside at the door. Thank you again for your continued support. Okay, so I'll introduce our speaker for this evening. I'm not going to give too much away because she will be able to tell you all about the ins and outs of the Invasive Species Prevention Program, but Cindy Sawchuk and her colleague Hilo are here with us tonight from Alberta Environment and Parks. Cindy has a Bachelor of Science from the University of Calgary, and Hilo is still working on his degree. Cindy and Hilo have been paired together since 2015 following a successful pilot study to determine the efficiency and efficacy of using detection dogs to detect invasive mussels, which you will learn more about tonight. They are based in Canmore out of the provincial building, but spend a lot of time on the road as Cindy is the provincial operations lead of the Aquatic Invasive Species Program. This includes running the watercraft inspections, decontamination, and the Conservation K9 Program. When he isn't working, Hilo enjoys taking long walks, admiring the bunny population in his neighborhood, playing with his buddies Shasta, Finny, and Scarlet, and eating all of the things that he can find. After Cindy's finished with her presentation, she will have time for questions, and following that, Hilo will be coming out and demonstrating his detection skills. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome with me, Cindy Sawchuk.
So I'm really excited to be here tonight sharing this program with you. It's a really innovative program in invasive species prevention and detection. I'm going to explain to you a little bit about how this program came about and why we're doing this in Alberta. And I also plan to demonstrate the incredible detection and discrimination skills that dogs have. So as Nick said, if you have any questions, we'll save those for the end. And then we'll have an opportunity if you don't want to stay for the demonstration or for whatever reasons, you're welcome to leave, and then I'll be sending Hilo around through the room. So the main purpose of our detection program is for the threat of invasive mussels. Now, invasive mussels are currently not in Alberta. I just want to make sure you're clear on that right from the get-go. They are non-native to Canada, and they were introduced in the late 1980s. Now, these invasive mussels don't have any natural predators, and they're so bad because they can reproduce incredibly rapidly. So one female can produce about 1 million offspring in one season. And so without any native natural predators to keep them in check, they just keep reproducing and reproducing. and causing all kinds of damage. So there's some crazy ecological damage that they cause. They are freshwater mollusks, and so when they're in the water, they are filter feeders. So what they're doing is they're filtering about 1 liter of water per mussel a day. They're filtering that through, and they're taking all the good nutrients in the water, like the phytoplankton. And so that's really negatively affecting the biodiversity and the native species that are in these water bodies, and it's really causing them harm. As well, there's a massive economic impact that these mussels cause, because they have these little threads on them, and these little threads are called byssal threads. And these threads are what they use to attach to any hard surface. And so what they'll do is they start to reproduce and clog up all kinds of systems, like water treatment facilities. I've heard of places in the United States where they've actually had to build a side-by-side water treatment plant because the mussels got in, they're clogging things up, and there's really no feasible way to eradicate them yet. And so they have to scrape them out, switch over to the other water treatment facility, and go back and forth. So this is something that's really damaging economically. We estimate that should these mussels establish in Alberta, in our waterways, this could cost us $75 million annually. And again, this isn't to eradicate them, this is now to maintain our structures. And we know this is probably a conservative estimate because in Ontario, they do have these invasive mussels throughout their waters, and they spend between $71 and $93 million annually just to maintain their water infrastructure. In Alberta, we have this incredible irrigation system. We have 8,000 kilometers of pipes and canals that move water, and they're moving water not just to irrigate crops, but they're moving water to supply wetlands, for recreation purposes, for boating and lakes, for drinking water, for facilities for municipalities. So if these mussels were to get into these pipes and canals, that would be completely devastating to Alberta's irrigation districts and to Alberta, because that end cost, $75 million a year, that's going to come down to the taxpayers if we do end up having to get these introduced. So the irrigation districts have become a really great partner in this prevention program, as you can understand why. So in Alberta, we established a prevention program of watercraft inspections. These are on most major highways coming into Alberta, and the reason why we have watercraft inspections is because boats are the #1 vector of an introduction of these invasive mussels. So these mussels, like I said, they like to attach. They're in fresh water. You can imagine if you're boating in Ontario, even if you just put your anchor down, have some lunch, hang out in the lake, those little mussels will crawl over, attach to that anchor. If you pull that anchor up, put it in your boat, those mussels could live for another 30 days. So you can imagine, how long does it take to drive to Alberta? A couple days. You go boating, drop that anchor back in the water, and there we have a source of an introduction. And we know these mussels will like it in Alberta because we have a lot of calcium in our water, especially in the south, and that's what they like to make their shells, to create their shells to harden. So we know they would thrive here should they be introduced. So we have these inspection stations all over the province. This one was just west of Calgary. We had a station there called Jumping Pound. So some of you may have noticed that as you were driving by on your way into the city. If you have a boat, whether it's trailered or a canoe or a kayak, it's the law you have to stop if we're open. And as well, if you have your drain plug in your boat, it's the law that you have to have that plug pulled. And the reason for that is water. Water in your boat could also be a form of an introduction because these mussels in their larval form can live for, again, another 30 days just in standing water. So we really want to encourage boaters and the public to make sure their watercraft are clean, drained, and dry. Here's some data that I collected from our watercraft inspection program one year. So that's Alberta in the middle. That's showing where all of the boats that came through our stations came from in one summer. That's nearly every state and province and territory where the boats originated before they came through. Now that's scary because we know these boats are moving, but also there are only 3 provinces and 4 states that we consider low risk for invasive mussels. and we're one of them. So all the rest of those states and provinces either have them or we consider high risk to have them. So these pictures I took when I was in Lake Winnipeg in 2016. It's pretty sad. In 2013, they discovered the first zebra mussel in this lake. And this picture here, you see where the boots are. In 2015, there wasn't a single mussel on that shore. We came back in 2016, and you can imagine all those mussels that have been reproducing, they're dying off, they're washing up on shore, they've completely covered that beach. They stink, they're sharp, so when you go swimming, they are, they're gonna cut your feet, and they destroy, imagine if you had a beachfront house there. Your property value just sunk. And this other picture is this guy, for some reason he had Christmas lights hanging off of his boat all summer. And when we were there in September, he pulled them off and they were completely covered in these mussels. So this shows you, that's just over the course of one summer. And the threat is getting closer. That's just in Winnipeg, or Lake Winnipeg. That's not very far away. So how do dogs come into play here, besides looking adorable? We have been living with dogs for 30,000 years. And despite that, we have only actually been using dogs for detection purposes since about the 90s. Dogs have desired to bring us things over the course of evolution. And they are the only species who tell us what they know. The dog's nose is the best chemical sensor that the world has ever known. And that's Hilo's nose. I took that yesterday with my iPhone. It is scary. So we as humans have about 5 million scent receptors in our nose, whereas our dogs have 220 million scent receptors. So where we perceive the landscape visually, our dogs perceive a very detailed scentscape. And they also use a very large portion of their brain for olfaction compared to a small part of the brain that we humans use for vision. I like to use this example, what it's like for a dog. Say you go out for a walk and you come back home and somebody has started to bake a cake in your house. So as soon as you walk in your house, you smell that cake baking. So then you go out for a walk with your dog and you come back in the house and your dog smells flour, sugar, eggs, cocoa, baking soda. Not only that, he smelled it a block away. So they have this incredible skill at discrimination. They can tell things apart, they can detect, they're flexible, and they really, really want to work with us. So we decided, since our watercraft inspection stations were already well established in the province, that we wanted to maybe see what it would be like to have detection dogs as part of this program. So we partnered with this wonderful organization called Working Dogs for Conservation. You should go home tonight and Google them. They're amazing. They're a nonprofit from Montana, and what they do is they're 4 biologists who founded it, and they take rescue dogs and they take them all over the world, train them to find targets that have a really high conservation value. So here's Amy Hurt. She is one of the co-founders, and she's with her dog Wicket. They're in China looking for Chinese moon bear scat. The Chinese moon bear is a species at risk due to harvesting for their gallbladders. Here they are in Cameroon searching for cross river gorilla dung. These dogs are endlessly trainable. Cross river gorilla are an endangered species, and so this is one method where they're looking for the dung and then they're analyzing that to understand a little bit about the population health. So in 2014, we decided to partner with Working Dogs for Conservation as a pilot study, and we said, okay, what is it like to have these dogs sitting at an inspection station day in and day out inspecting boats for mussels? And we knew at this point that California and Minnesota, they did have detection dogs that were looking for mussels, but that was one of many targets. These dogs were actually enforcement dogs, so these dogs were looking for all kinds of things, not just mussels. We didn't really know what it would be like to have them sitting on the, looking at boats day in and day out. As I was proposing this to my organization, that it would be a good idea to pilot using dogs, I remember there was a very, very senior officer when I was proposing this, and he said, you know, Cindy, I think dogs are good, but they're only good for public education. I think they'll be good for PR, but that's all they're good for. And I kind of had it in my mind that maybe he's right, but I just totally wanted to prove him wrong. So during the course of that pilot, we took the watercraft inspectors, the humans that were working in Alberta, and we set up a double-blind trial. And so we had the trained canines from Working Dogs for Conservation, and we went to this old boat shop near Medicine Hat. It had a bunch of old used boats, and we set up some of these boats as blanks, and we set some of them up with mussels. And I wanted to compare the accuracy and the efficiency of the dogs versus the humans in detecting these invasive mussels on watercraft. And some of the boats, I only had one tiny mussel. And you can imagine how big some of these boats are, right? So it wasn't like it was an easy test. But I don't think the results are going to surprise anyone in the room. The dogs outperformed the humans in every which way. So in this, and I want to be clear, this is only in this trial, the dogs were 100% accurate at detecting the foul boats. And the humans came in at 75% accurate. As well, the dogs were much quicker when it came to inspecting the boats. So they averaged about 3 minutes, and that included time to play with their toys. And the humans took well over 10 minutes, and there wasn't any toy playing with the humans. So that was pretty much enough evidence, I would say, because the public was also overwhelmingly in support when they came through these boat inspection stations and we had dogs for the first time. So due to that, we decided to create our own canine program in Alberta. And I want to stop right now and thank the irrigation districts of Alberta because they completely funded this program for us. They were super jazzed about the pilot and what the dogs could do. They're super scared about how this could impact the infrastructure in Alberta. And so it's not often where you see stakeholders coming to government and saying, let's work together, here's some money, make it happen. So it's a pretty neat program. So we have 3 dogs in our program. People often say to me, you know, I have a crazy dog at home. My dog could totally be a detection dog. Well, in actuality, less than 1 in 1,000 dogs has what it takes to make a detection dog. The main thing that we look for when we're looking for a detection dog is their insane amount of focus and their obsession with toys. So this toy, this is what drives the dog to work every day. And like I said, it's less than 1 in 1,000 have that extreme obsession. And their ability to remain focused, because there's all kinds of things that could be distracting, you know, squirrels and whatnot. And then as well, high energy. So that's what makes a good detection dog. I'll introduce you to our team now. So this is Seuss and Hannah. They're stationed up in the northeast part of the province. They do most of their watercraft inspections at Cold Lake and near Vermilion. Seuss is a 6-year-old German Shepherd. He came to us from California. He was found in a shelter. Most dogs who are these detection dogs are so crazy that they don't make good family pets, and they are often found in shelters because they really just need something to do, and it's pretty hard to figure that out. So Seuss was found in a shelter and has been with us now for 5 years. This is Diesel. He also came from California and also was found in a shelter. He's a chocolate lab cross. And one thing that's really neat about Seuss and Diesel is when they were assessed for our program and it was determined that they would make good working dogs and they decided they wanted the job too, there was a pilot in California and he voluntarily flew Seuss and Diesel in his own plane with his own fuel from California to Montana, and there the dogs were driven across the border to be part of our program, and they made it was a big news on California TV and whatnot. So it's a really neat kind of story of how they came to be here with us. Now Hilo, he actually started out in guide dog school. He's also an American. He didn't want that job either in guide dog school. So he's a career change dog. At 1 year old, he decided he wanted to come to Canada. I always say it's because we have a much better healthcare program here than in the US. And so he and I are paired together, and he's 5 years old. So all dogs are roughly the same age, all 3 dogs. And Hilo and I are based here in Canmore, but we travel around the province and we visit lots of the inspection stations throughout the summer. These dogs live with us. They're fully integrated into our lives, into our families, into our recreation. It's really important because we need that bond and that trusting relationship. So if I'm asking Hilo to do something, he's going to trust me that I'm not out to get him into trouble. And similarly, if he's trying to tell me something, it's good that I'm able to understand him. So unfortunately, in 2016, Montana announced that they were positive in one reservoir for invasive mussels and suspect in another. Now that's getting even closer, right? That's just south of the border from us. And so they called me up, the state did, and they said, we know you have these trained detection dogs. Do you think they could help us search for actual mussels? Because they only found the microscopic mussels in the water sample. And it's a really big management consideration if you find microscopic mussels versus establishing populations. So they really needed to know whether that was happening or not. So along with Working Dogs for Conservation, we pioneered the method for looking for adult mussels along shorelines. We went to Lake Powell in Utah, and there we trained the dogs how to switch from a short, intense search on a boat for the same type of odor, but along a beach and along a shoreline. And it was really cool because we were working with the biologists in Lake Powell, and they told us that when they got their first veliger detection, which is the microscopic mussels, it took them 8 months before they found the first adult. And they said it really would have been helpful if they would have had dogs out there looking as well. So now we have another application. Our dogs are part of early detection, rapid response planning for invasive mussels anywhere in Alberta, well, actually not anywhere in North America. We're the only unit of its kind that are actually doing this kind of work. So we have been deployed in Riding Mountain National Park to look for these invasive mussels. They've sent us down to Washington, we've gone to Montana, and of course all over Alberta. And we have spent, last summer, we searched 23 different lakes in Alberta and all came back negative for these invasive mussels. So we're not only searching the beach, you can see that's Diesel on the beach in the background there looking. He hates the water, so Hilo and I but we're also sniffing any kind of water infrastructure and boat launches and things like that where these mussels could be attached. So I'm going to take a break and show you a little video that kind of helps explain everything about what we're doing when it comes to the shoreline searches and the mussel detection. This film crew actually came from the United Kingdom to film us, so enjoy the show.
Dogs are born with an incredible sense of smell.
Something there?
They put their superpower to work
Yes, good girl.
as scent detectives,
Looking to pick up the scent.
policing the environment
Good, check here.
and saving endangered species.
Good dog.
They're experts
Very good.
at sniffing out trouble.
Good job.
Dogs are smart, loyal, and equipped to do things we simply can't. Their powerful sense of smell, their strength and stamina, and their unlimited desire to play
Good boy.
has enabled us to harness their natural abilities, resulting in an impressive array of dogs with extraordinary jobs. Alberta Province, Western Canada. A vast and beautiful landscape dominated by spectacular mountains, lakes and rivers. But Canada's aquatic habitats are under threat from an invasion. A non-native species is colonizing North America's lakes, wreaking ecological havoc. zebra mussels. They don't belong here, and since they arrived in the 1980s, they've been spreading like wildfire. Invasive mussels are crowding out the native species, causing some indigenous mussel populations to decline up to 90% over 10 years. Mussels are filter feeders, sifting algae from the water. That's normally a good thing, but a vast army of hungry zebra mussels can filter an entire lake every few days, stripping it of nutrients and starving its fish, potentially devastating an entire ecosystem. On the frontier to stop their advance into Alberta, Canada, is this team of specialist sniffer dogs. Cindy Sawchuk coordinates the Aquatic Invasive Species Program.
All three dogs have very different personalities. Seuss is a German Shepherd, and if he could speak, I feel like Seuss would say, "You guys hired me to do a job. Get out of my way, I got this. I'm going to give this 110% every time." Diesel's the smallest, but he's our leader. He just loves to show off with acrobatics. So this guy is nicknamed the Professor because he's super methodical and really detailed with the way he searches. It's like he has to think about everything before he makes a really good decision.
His real name's Hilo. He's a 4-year-old Labrador mix with a nose for unwanted visitors. Together, the invasive species team protects Alberta's waters by sniffing out the zebra mussels. Today, the team will be searching for zebra mussels at a boat inspection station on a busy interstate highway.
Are they going to stay up? There we go.
The most common way for mussels to enter a new area is as hitchhikers, clinging to the hulls of boats being moved from one lake to another.
We have watercraft inspection stations at every major road coming into Alberta. We are the front line for prevention.
The mussels are typically just half an inch long, which makes them hard to see.
So these are zebra mussels. You can see these little threads are what the mussels use to attach. They can be really tiny. We've seen them the size of a grain of rice. We don't tend to see giant mussels all over the boat that are really obvious. We tend to see the really small ones, and so that's why it's really great to have canines as part of the inspections team.
Before he gets to work, Hilo must put on special boots to prevent him from scratching the expensive boats.
So we're going to bring you around the front, Hilo.
Thousands of pleasure boats hop between Canada's 2 million lakes every day, by truck and trailer.
So this is Hilo. He's going to inspect your boat.
Owners are supposed to wash and dry their boats to decontaminate them before moving them.
Good checking, mister.
But not everybody does.
Yeah, check up here. Right now, Hilo is in work mode. While we perceive the landscape visually, our dogs perceive them with their noses. So he's looking to pick up the scent of the zebra mussel that could be attached. If he finds it, he'll tell me he's found it by sitting. And we call that a passive alert. Good boy, come on over here.
Hilo can smell the difference between a native mussel and an invasive one.
Oh, good job, mister. Very good searching. We're almost finished this boat, Mr. Professor.
Any boat that's been in infested water could harbor a mussel.
Very good. Good, let's check in your nose in there. Very good. Check right here. Check here. Nice. Check, check.
The dogs work quickly around the boats, but so far there's no sign of any illicit mollusks. Zebra mussels are freshwater mussels native to Eastern Europe. They first arrived in North America in the late 1980s as unwitting stowaways in commercial ships traveling through the Great Lakes. Since then, the mussels have spread rapidly. They're now in 750 lakes across North America. One of the most infested in Canada is Lake Winnipeg. In just 5 years, concentrations of more than 900 individuals per square foot have been found living in the water. In some places, its beaches are carpeted a foot deep with zebra mussel shells. Aquatic ecologist Dr. Eva Pipp was the first person to spot these mollusks in the lake's tributaries and the first to raise the alarm in 2011.
It's heartbreaking. There are billions and billions and billions of zebra mussels now in Lake Winnipeg. It is uncontrollable. Almost every lake that has been invaded, it has been impossible to eradicate them.
Zebra mussels have no natural predators in North America, and scientists haven't been able to eradicate them. The mussels are also prolific breeders.
A female mussel will start reproducing normally in her second year, and she'll produce up to 1 million eggs in a single season. Because they reproduce so rapidly, they outcompete the native freshwater mussels in waterways and lakes. They literally choke out organisms that would normally inhabit the bottom.
The mussels aren't just creating an ecological disaster. They're also causing millions of dollars of damage. They cling to any hard surface under the water, clogging pipes and vital infrastructure. Over time, this causes substantial damage and significant costs to the economy.
So you can see all these are zebra mussels attached to each other. In Ontario, we know that they spend almost $93 million annually. And that's not because they're trying to eradicate them. That's the cost they spend just in maintaining their structures that have been impacted by these mussels. In Alberta, we have the largest irrigation district in Canada. We have 8,000 kilometers of pipes and canals. Many of these pipes are buried to provide water for irrigation, for the farmers, for industry, for drinking water, for recreation purposes. Should these mussels become attached in these pipes and canals, it would be completely devastating for Alberta.
Shoreline checks are the quickest way to find out if a lake or waterway has been invaded. That's why today, Hilo and the team have travelled beyond Alberta's border to Lake Winnipeg to practice finding the culprits. This section of beach only has a sprinkling of zebra mussels. A training search will put the dog's scent detection skills to the test.
We're going to act like this is a suspect lake, so you're preparing for the real thing, where you're going to head out with your dogs and...
Deborah Willett is from Working Dogs for Conservation, the organisation that trained this canine trio to distinguish the scent of a zebra mussel from any native species through positive reinforcement training.
We work in a very detailed way. They're really thoroughly searching with their nose. Their nose is close to the ground. They're taking a lot of sniffs as they cover a patch of area. The dogs are really good at what they do compared to humans. They have an extremely powerful sense of smell.
Finding a tiny mussel camouflaged on a vast pebble beach is mission impossible for a human.
Good boy.
But not for a dog nicknamed the Professor.
Good searching. When they're searching shorelines, they're not picking up these mussels from a great distance. Their nose has to be virtually right on them. Whoops.
Hilo's got something.
Oh, I see it. Good boy. Good boy. Well done. You gotta see this one. It's hidden right in the rocks. Good boy. So this is what he alerted on. They're attached to this little rock. They don't even actually have any tissue or muscle matter inside it. He's just detecting the shell. So that's pretty amazing. What a fine boy. Oh, what a fine boy.
Like all working dogs, Hilo loves a reward.
Their paycheck is this special ball that they only get to play with when they find the mussels. So it's a really big party for them. It's a big party for all of us. What a fine boy. My good dog.
Back in Alberta, Cindy is always looking for fun ways to motivate the energetic team and keep their skills sharp for such important work.
You ready? Let's go find it.
She's hidden a zebra mussel in one of these boxes.
Let's go find it.
If the professor finds it, he'll get a pop-up reward.
Yay!
It's the perfect game for Diesel to show why his nickname is the Acrobat. At the boat inspection station, the dogs are back on duty. While they search for mussels, Hilo and the team also help to get the message out to boaters.
The dogs make great ambassadors and are really good tools for the public education aspect of our program because they're big, they're furry, people feel a connection when they see the dogs working at the inspection station. Good work. Because that's really the only way we'll be successful is if every member of the boating public does their part. And that's the only way we can truly eliminate the threat.
In 2018, the inspection teams checked 32,000 boats coming into Alberta.
Come this way.
15 were contaminated with invasive mussels and prevented from entering the waterways.
We're almost finished this boat, Mr. Professor. Good job, buddy. Good job.
Today, the team finds nothing, which is a good result for everyone.
It's been a really busy Sunday, and it's a great job we're doing out here. I'm really proud. Mister, what a fine job that was. Oh.
Thanks in part to these canine detectives, Alberta's waterways are safe, at least for now. A dog's sense of smell can help us find invasive species and prevent devastating damage to the environment.
Check up here.
Their unique sensory skills can also uncover rare hidden treasures.
The zebra mussel, right? Yeah, it was funny when Diesel was doing those acrobatic shots with the balls, he actually smashed into the camera and broke it. Fortunately, the cameraman had insurance, they said, so it was fine. But the truth is, the dogs really are an amazing public education tool. And those, when they approached me, they're Oxford Scientific Films about, potentially coming to work with us to do this documentary. They were really stoked about us because they said we kind of cover all the bases. We have rescue dogs, we're using science, and we're doing conservation work. So it's pretty cool. And we also estimate that we've had about $1 million worth of free media attention from these dogs. So that's spreading the word to Albertans and to Canadians to do their part, which normally we probably wouldn't have had if the government wouldn't have paid $1 million for all these television interviews and whatnot. So the dogs really do make great ambassadors. We even had the New York Times come out and do an article about us. So we do a lot of our training through Working Dogs for Conservation and in partnership with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. We go there every year because they do have live mussels, and we do our training through them and our certification. So we actually go down there to get tested by a scary canine fish and wildlife officer with a gun and a mustache and everything, just to make it super legit that, we don't want to just be like, oh, we've got this, we're the Alberta team. So we really make sure that we have that check on us every year. And we go down there, and I'll show you a little bit, because it's pretty fun, about our training. So this is when we first met our dogs. We met them in California, And we start by imprinting the odor on them. And so these are called hair boxes, and you can hide the mussels in these boxes, and then the dogs go along, and as soon as they find the odor, if they sit, then the ball will fall down for them. So it's pretty cool. This is a scent wall, and basically there's all these holes cut in it with PVC pipe behind it so that we can hide mussels. And the dogs are learning to go up and down just to mimic like they would on a boat when they're looking in through-hull fittings and whatnot. So they're putting their nose in the holes, and then of course they get the ball reward if they find the mussels and they sit and they tell us about it. We also hide distraction odors back there, so things that you would find in a boat that we don't want the dogs to tell us about, like hamburgers and engine oil and things like that. And so it's kind of a really neat exercise that we do. And finally, we teach the dogs to pinpoint exactly where that odor is. So if the dog tells me it's on this boat somewhere and he sits or along that shore, he has to show me exactly where it is with his nose before he gets his paycheck. And this shows you just some of the little bit of the detail. That's a mussel, and that's Hilo's paw print on you know, how small this amount of odor is. Well, these dogs are endlessly trainable. So they have invasive mussels on boats and on shores. And a couple of years ago, we learned about this invasive weed called Thesium arvense, and we understood that the only known location of this weed in all of Canada was in Fish Creek Provincial Park. And so being an invasive weed, the park wanted to understand the distribution of this weed in the park. So we were like, well, maybe we can train the dogs to find this weed. It's completely different. It's, you know, there's plants and deer and gophers and wind and all kinds of tall grasses. You know, is this a possibility? So I'm going to show you another really quick video. I promise it's not as long as the last one, on how we actually train the dogs in only 9 days to find this invasive weed. So we ended up working on that project. We did that pilot successfully. We went back again the following spring. As it turned out, the weed was much more established throughout the park, much more widespread than anticipated. So there wasn't really much need for us to go and actually search for the weed, because it now turned into a management issue with how to manage this weed in the park. And as well, we determined that the detection distance between the humans and the dogs was very similar. So it's not like the dogs were finding this particular plant at any greater distance than we were. So we don't work on that Thesium project anymore, but it's just really neat to show you how we go through that training and all the different steps it takes. And again, only 9 days, and the dogs were looking for this particular weed by itself. Yes, our dogs love their jobs, absolutely. So have you heard of the issue of feral swine? Yes, it's a thing, and it's a thing in Alberta actually. This summer, University of Saskatchewan released a report about the widespread distribution of these feral pigs throughout Canada, and they are established here in Alberta. This picture I took, this is rooting that they do. So they root around, they wallow, they cause incredible ecological damage. They destroy wetlands, they can degrade water quality, they harass prey and wildlife, or they harass livestock and prey on livestock. They cause incredible amount of crop damage. They are reservoirs of disease. There is a thing called African swine fever, and should these wild pigs give that to domestic pigs in Alberta, that is an industry that is worth billions of dollars, not millions. And that would completely decimate that. So this is a really big issue, and we're really scared about these wild pigs. They were first brought into Alberta as part of a livestock diversification in the 90s. And what probably happened is these pigs potentially escaped, or maybe they were even let go. And now they reproduce quite well. They travel in these groups called sounders. So it's about a dozen pigs traveling together. They reproduce at a high rate, and they're highly adaptable to our harsh climates here. They dig these little pigloos in the wintertime, and they all hang out there in cold northern Alberta. So it's something that's on our radar, and it's on the radar for Alberta Agriculture, the Department of Agriculture. They have piloted an eradication program, and when I learned about that, I was like, you know, I've heard about dogs detecting feral swine scat in New York State. So New York State has been successful in their eradication program of these wild pigs. And so I approached agriculture and I said, you know, how would you feel about it if we tried to train our dogs to help out? And they were way on board with that. So we got samples of wild pig poo, and sort of the same way that we were training the dogs on finding the weeds, we trained them successfully to detect this pig scat. And the purpose of our dogs now will be to help monitor, to find out where the dogs are, where the pigs are, as well as in the eradication pilot that's happening right now, we're going in afterwards to see if it was successful. So the dogs are out there looking for scat, for pig scat. And one thing Hilo has definitely told me is that pig poo is apparently delicious. So these are just some photos of our deployment up near Mayerthorpe just this summer, where we were looking for the pig scat. And this is Sooth. He's just like, you can tell he's sitting there and he's like, are you guys coming already? Like, I found it. Just get your notebooks out and get on with it. So that concludes my presentation. Cutest picture ever. Thank you very much. I'd like to open it up if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, we'll start the demonstration, and then we can certainly do questions afterwards. Yes, you in the orange.
Great presentation, Cindy. How do you recognize the dog can focus initially? How do you recognize that?
Oh, that's a good question. So the question was, how can we recognize the dog's ability to focus initially when we're interviewing dogs for our program? So one of the tests that we do when we have a dog candidate is we'll have someone that the dog doesn't know, hold the ball, and there's a series of tests, and this is the final one. Hold the ball, show the dog the ball, and then like throw it as far away as possible. And then this other person, who the dog doesn't know, holds the dog for a full minute. Now that is a long time just to sit there. And so, you know, 999 times out of 1,000, the dog will get bored on their way to go find that ball that's hidden way far away behind some trees, right? But that 1 in 1,000 dog doesn't care about the gophers that went by or the snacks on the way and whatnot. They are so obsessed with the ball, they run for it. And so that's part of it. I mean, there's other ideas like when you're going into a shelter, you know, there's all the dogs looking at the human, like, pick me, and then there's that one dog when you're bouncing a ball in your hand who's just doing that. So those are some of the ways. Yes, you in the front?
When you've got a dog at the station inspecting boats and he finds nothing for like 3-4 hours, how do you keep him motivated?
Great question again. So the question for those who didn't hear, how do we keep the dogs motivated when they're working at boat inspection station hour after hour and we're not finding any mussels? Well, they're finding them. So we actually plant mussels. For him, it's 1 in 5 boats he's getting his paycheck because that's his stamina. Seuss could inspect 30 boats and just keep on going. So we make sure that they are having their fun. I mean, for them, going to work is the most fun thing in their lives. Not too many of us in the room probably say that. Yes, go ahead.
How do you let the dogs know that today is a zebra mussel day and not a weed day?
Okay, so the question was, how do the dogs, are they able to differentiate between, are we looking for the weed or the mussel? And that's a good question. So it's about context for them, first of all. We put on their uniform, they know they're going to work. He sees me with the ball and my pouch. He could find the weed and the mussel in the same room. Doesn't matter. Yeah. And there was a dog in Montana who retired, a detection dog. She had 30 different target odors. Is there anyone, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
And you, sir, behind?
I'm just wondering, when you do an assessment on a lake, if you do find a zebra mussel, what would you do to sort of prevent it from expanding? Because our family's got cottage in Lake Winnipeg, and I can't believe how much this is catastrophic. Within 10 years, it's destroyed the lake. Okay,
so for those of you who didn't hear the question, he was saying, what if we do find a zebra mussel along a shore or at a dock in a lake? Because he has seen personally what has happened in Lake Winnipeg. Well, we have an emergency response crew in Alberta government. They're called a CERT. And if we were to find a mussel, they would be called in. And we would focus our efforts now on containment. And so we have an early detection rapid response plan. And that plan, we would have to get all the players at the table and figure out, well, first of all, where is ground zero? Where did this first mussel come from? What other water bodies does this lake feed into? Because they're all interconnected in Alberta, especially in southern Alberta. You know, do we shut off the taps in the irrigation districts in June? That's probably not going to happen, right? That's kind of a big deal. And so, yeah, we would focus our efforts on containment. I said mussels are virtually impossible to eradicate, but liquid potash has been shown to be successful in killing off the mussels and keeping everything else safe in the water. So we currently in Alberta are working through, well, actually Western Canada, we're all working together to get a permit to have liquid potash to use in an emergency situation. They did try that in Lake Winnipeg. I have to give them credit. They bermed off the South Bay where they first found the mussels, and they brought in all these experts and liquid potash, and they were doing all these trials, and they were showing that the mussels were dying. However, there was a lot of pressure from commercial fishing, and they had to open up these berms, and quite likely these mussels were already established in other places anyway. But yeah, basically, if we get them, not good. So that's why we're really focusing on prevention. You in the back, that's Andrew. Hi.
Are 3 dogs enough to cover a province?
Oh, I'd love to have many more dogs. The question was, are 3 dogs enough to cover a whole province? We're working with the humans, right? So we have 30 to 50 humans out there doing our prevention program. 3 dogs are complementing that. Jay Heineman.
What is it? It's primarily lakes, but what about rivers? Do they use the rivers and different, fast-flowing rivers make a difference?
Sure, so the question was, is it only lakes or can they get into rivers? They can get into rivers. Yeah, and that's probably how they got into Lake Winnipeg, is through the Red River. Yeah, they can, the whole Colorado River system is infested with mussels. So all the boaters in Alberta who like to be snowbirds and go south, they're all coming back this time of year with their boats, and they've been in the Colorado River system. It's very awesome. I mean, boating is pretty crappy even in the summer in Alberta, so our boaters are definitely traveling, and we've had 6 notifications just this week. So I should tell you, we work closely with Canada Border Services, and so if you're coming back into Canada 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they will notify us. They'll have you fill out a form and they will tell us about you. So it's a really good cooperation we have with the feds. And so then we'll follow up with you for these boats that are coming back. So we've had 6 already this week. We actually had a mussel-fowl boat that was intercepted in Idaho last week, and it was destined for Wetaskiwin. That's where this boater was from. And so Idaho folks tried to decontaminate it, but it was frozen. Their decontamination unit was frozen. So they let us know. We informed Canada Border Services. We were able to get this boat sealed up and quarantined, and we'll deal with it when we can defrost our decontamination units. Yes?
What's the average retirement age for a working dog, and what happens after?
Oh, so what's the average retirement age for a working dog and what happens after? We have a great retirement package for our dogs. Yeah. He's going to tell me when he's ready to retire. And the average age is long. Like in Montana, the working dogs for conservation, they're working when they're still 12 years old because they're so driven. They're having so much fun. But we're not going to push them, right? So when he retires, he's going to take over the king-size bed in the spare room, and he'll stay with me. But they do tend to have really long working careers. But again, it's totally up to them. In the back.
How long was the initial training for getting them all ready? Like there was the 9 days for the new introduction, but how long was the initial training?
So the question was, how long was the initial training? So I learned to be a handler at the same time he learned to be a detection dog. We estimate that was about 140 hours. It was a long, intensive, a lot of work. And he was actually quite rude when he first came to live with me as well. You go ahead, sir.
How does the decontamination unit work?
Oh, good question. How does the decontamination unit work? So if your if your boat has these invasive mussels on it, we as Alberta provide the service of decontaminating that boat for you. It's high pressure and hot water, and that's it. So really hot water though, 60 degrees, and that kills the mussels. And then the high pressure is what removes them, because we don't want to cause a false positive if these mussels were to fall off in a lake, even though we knew they were dead. And so this is the standard across the Pacific Northwest. The Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission are the ones who keep us up to date on the most science, knowledge, and understanding of these mussels in this program. So what you would get here in Alberta would be the same if you were down in Oregon, say, boating, and you had mussels on your boat. It's the exact same process, and we all work together, we notify each other, all of that good stuff. Yes?
You talked about the controls at the border with the U.S., but what happens if a boat comes from BC after hours when your crew's done?
Yep, and that is the reality of it. So the question was, what happens if a boat comes from BC or any time of the day when our inspection stations are closed? yeah, that boat enters. So that's why we really focus on the public education aspect. Because if people are doing their part, there's no way we as government could inspect every single boat that comes into this province. There's no way. And so this public education, and the dogs are a huge part of that, that's where we're encouraging the people to do their own part. So they're, you know, cleaning their boat, they're making sure it's drained of any water, and then it's completely dry, and hopefully doing their part. But yeah, we're at risk.
Cindy, how quickly do those little mussels attach to stuff? So like, could some stick on your boots or your waders or a duck?
Okay, so could the mussels stick to boots, waders, or a duck? Yes. Now, there has been one study where they said that the veligers, the microscopic mussels, could be transported by birds. And I read it, and I don't know, it's like the birds were going from pond to pond. They weren't flying up in the great blue sky. So I don't really think that, I mean, they say that ducks and birds could be a vector. However, it's not something that's terribly concerning. Yeah, they like hard surfaces, but there's two types of mussels, zebra mussels and quagga mussels. The quagga mussels are even more adaptable to softer substrates, so they will attach to even things like fine silt at the bottom of a water. So yeah, they can attach to anything. So we encourage clean, drain, dry your gear. If you have life jackets that are in a live well and they're wet, we'll bring them out and we'll hose them down with our super hot water to make sure that there isn't anything on that. Yes, in the back.
Does the water for sure kill them? Because like when you're spraying them off of a boat or something, where is that? What if one of them didn't die from that and then that goes down the drain somewhere else? Yeah.
Okay, so does the water actually kill them, and then what if they don't die? So the water is super hot, and it does, it's the most effective. I mean, we're not going to start bleaching everyone's boat as they come through. And just so you're relieved to hear this, we don't decontaminate boats anywhere that have open water systems or wetlands nearby or anything like that. Like, we know exactly where we're putting that water and collecting it.
What are the mussels' natural predator in Eastern Europe?
There's like a brown goby. That's one of the natural predators. Yeah, they're just kept in check in their own country. We just want to, or their own part of the world. We just want to keep them out. This is for sure the most questions I've ever had after a job. Keep them coming. Keep them coming.
What's a brown goby?
It's a fish. Okay, can we bring? Yeah.
Are there? Sorry, this will be the last one. Are there any like fish here that are at all relative to the gobies? Is there like anything here that could even remotely?
I have seen like some birds. Where was that? I think it was in Lake Winnipeg. No, it was in Lake Powell in Utah. And there was this buoy that had been exposed when they dropped the water level. It was covered in mussels. And I watched over the course of the week birds just coming and picking at it. But remember, they're reproducing so rapidly.
Yeah.
Like, so rapidly that it's impossible to keep them in check. And yeah, introducing another non-native species is not a good way to manage that. Kim.
Have you ever experienced people wondering whether the dogs can find other things than mussels?
Oh yeah. So have we ever had people worried about our dogs looking for other things? So I'll tell you what, until we legalized marijuana, I had a giant sign up at the inspection stations that said, we're only looking for mussels, we're not looking for guns or drugs or alcohol. Like, I mean, one time this guy came through and he's like, oh yeah, like I got glaucoma. And I'm like, hey, it doesn't matter. Dogs are not trained on anything else. We're not enforcement dogs. We are strictly conservation detection dogs, and we wanted to encourage people to come in and not be scared. But oh yeah, you'd be surprised at how many people would come in and be worried. And actually, when we were first sourcing dogs for the program, I got a call from Washington, and Washington at that point had already legalized marijuana. We hadn't. And they said, you know, we've got this great dog. She's a super good working dog. She's a German Shepherd. She's a drug detecting dog. and she's out of a job. Like, hard times for everyone, right? Like, the German Shepherd didn't have a job anymore because they legalized weed. But I said, you know what, we couldn't take that dog because I don't want, like, we're not officers. I don't want the dog to tell me there's drugs in the boat because then what? Like, anyway. Okay, that's it. I'm just going to bring Hilo out and I'll explain a little bit about how the detection, or the, I can't even talk anymore. Demonstration. Okay. So, as you are now aware, we do most of our work, actually all of our work outside. And so when we're looking for the target, we're looking at things like wind direction and weather, and trying to make sure our dogs are always downwind of the target, because we have what's called a scent cone. And so what the dog is trying to do is narrow down the scent cone to the point where the odor is at its strongest. So it's going to be super funky in a room like this with a bunch of jackets and air fans and all that. So have some patience with them. But if he does find, there may be invasive mussels in this room, you never know. If he does find it, he's going to sit, and then he's going to get a big party. Like, he will want to show off. So please engage with him, clap for him, and let him know what a good boy he is. And me too, obviously.
Cindy.
Yeah, if anyone is uncomfortable having a dog run around your legs, now's your time to leave, because yeah, we'll let him stretch a bit first.
Ready to go to work? Ready to go to work? Okay, let's go find it. Let's go find it.
So try not to pet him if he comes through your legs, just while he's working, but let him do what he needs to do. Good boy, good boy. You find it. Come check over here. Check here. Good. Good checking. Check up here.
Yes, good boy!
So if you couldn't see that very well, he did find some mussels and he went right to his friend Andrew to show him. Give him a tug. Come on, tug with him. Yeah.